So I don't know what's going on, but my StreamYard is giving me a hard time, as everything has been giving me a hard time since I've started. But I'm just going to press through. So today's episode, um, we're going to be talking about Gen X and the spirit of Jael. Um, so the name of this particular episode is Carrying the Pike. Now, just for a little background, we're going to dive into a powerful and unexpected comparison. It's one that stretches across generations in scripture. Today, we're talking about Gen X and how the generation mirrors the strength, independence, and quiet defiance of Jael from the book of Judges. Now, if you're not familiar with Jael, just stay with me. Her story is short, but it's impactful, and it carries themes that feel surprisingly modern. So let's get into it. Who is Jael? In the book of Judges, chapter 4, Jael appears briefly, but her role is pivotal. Israel is under oppression. A Canaanite commander named Sisera is terrorizing the people. After a battle, Sisera flees and ends up at Jael's tent. She welcomes him in, offers him comfort, gives him milk, allows him to rest, and then she kills him. Not in a battle, not in a spectacle, but quietly, strategically, and decisively. Jael doesn't ask permission. She doesn't announce her intentions. She assesses the situation and she acts. Her story is not about chaos, it's about timing, discernment, and stepping in when others hesitate. Now, let's shift this to the Gen X identity. We are often described as independent, resourceful, skeptical of systems, adaptable, quietly resilient. This is the latchkey generation that we speak of, and many of us grew up learning how to take care of ourselves. They don't always seek the spotlight, but when something needs to get done, they do it. Does that sound familiar? The power of quiet action. One of the strongest parallels between Gen X and JL is this: they don't perform strength, they live it. JL didn't rally an army, she didn't stand on a battlefield with the sword raised high. She opened, she operated in her own space, her tent, and used what she had. Gen X often does the same thing. We're not always the loudest voice in the room. We're not driven by constant validation, but we observe, we calculate, and when necessary, we move. In a world that often rewards noise over substance, both JL and Gen X remind us that quiet actions can be the most powerful force of all. Distrust of systems and trust in instincts. JL didn't rely on the structures around her. She didn't wait for orders. She didn't defer to authority. She trusted her instincts. Gen X, we grew up during a time of cultural and institutional shifts, economic instability, changing family structures, evolving social norm. As a result, we learned early not to rely on systems. Instead, we developed an internal compass. We ask, does this make sense? Is this right? What's really going on here? This skepticism it isn't rebellion just for the sake of it. It's survival. And jail's environment was unpredictable. War was happening, power was shifting, danger was present, yet she remained composed. Gen X thrives in uncertainty in kind of much the same way, right? We've navigated the rise of technology, economic recessions, workplace transformation, cultural shifts. We didn't grow up digital, we adapted to it. We didn't expect stability, but we learned to create it. Like JL, we just don't panic in chaos, we assess it. Let's be honest. JL's story can make people uncomfortable. It doesn't fit neatly into traditional experiences, and Gen X often faces the same misunderstanding. We can be perceived as detached, unapproachable, resistant, but what's really happening is that we're focused. This is the misunderstood strength. We're efficient. We don't need to broadcast every move, we just make the move. JL didn't explain herself in a moment, she acted with clarity. And sometimes that kind of decisiveness is unsettling to those who expect everything to be softened, explained, or approved. You know, we managed to operate outside the spotlight. JL wasn't the central figure of the story. She wasn't. Deborah, the judge and prophet, she wasn't. Barack, the military leader, she wasn't. He wasn't. I'm sorry. She was actually unexpected. Gen X, sometimes we occupy the same space as JL, right? Um, so let me first rephrase the statement. So Deborah the judge and the prophet, she wasn't really the central figure of the story, right? And Barack the soldier, the military leader, he also was not really the central figure of the story. If you really read this story, they were on equal ground, right? It could have easily been about his fear and his disobedience, as it could have been about her obedience and her prophesying and her willingness to go. So we get to JL, and as I stated, she was unexpected. See, Gen X, we often occupy the same space alongside outside the spotlight, but essential for the outcomes. We're the ones who are holding systems together, solving problems behind the scenes, bridging gaps between generations. We don't always get the recognition, but our impact is undeniable. JL's tent was her space. And oftentimes, as Gen X, we have to set up boundaries and self preservation. So she used her tent as her personal space and she controlled what happened in it. Another strong trait that we have, that's another one, boundaries. Boundaries. We value personal space, autonomy, emotional independence. We're just not drawn to forced communication or performance collaboration. It's not hostility, it's clarity. We understand that not every relationship needs to be deep and not every situations require emotional response. Sometimes it's really about maintaining control of your environment and protecting your peace. JL's story isn't simple. It actually raises questions. Was her action justified? Was it strategic? Was it necessary? The Bible paints her as a hero, but the method is complex. With us, we live in that same space of complexity. We understand that not every decision is clean. Not every situation has a clear right or wrong. Sometimes actions require slipping into those little gray areas. And we don't always look for perfect solutions. We look for effective ones. Faith, action, and responsibility is what we have going on here. JL didn't just believe in a better outcome, she participated in it. And that's the key takeaway. With Gen X, we tend to lean more towards action over talk. We don't always express our faith loudly, but we live it through responsibility, consistency, and follow through. We ask what needs to be done and how do I do it well. There's a grounded faith in that itself. So what can we learn from JL? We can learn courage doesn't always look loud. Timing matters. Use what you have. Independence is a strength. Boundaries are necessary. Adaptability is survival. Now, as we go deeper, let's think about this. There's another layer to this story, as well as it is to this generation. It doesn't always get talked about. We're gonna talk about the cost of having this strength, the emotional landscape behind it, and the spiritual weight of being the one who steps in when no one else will. Let's start here. Being the one who handles it isn't always a badge of honor. It's often a burden. JL didn't just act, she carried the weight of the action afterwards. Scripture celebrates her, yes, but imagine the eternal reality. She made a life or death decision alone. She crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She bore the consequences of a decisive action. We know that feeling very well. We are often the ones who fix things, the ones who step up when others freeze, the one who carry the responsibility without being asked. But what doesn't get discussed is the after, the silence of the decision, the weight of the solution, the question, did I have to be the one? Yes, yes, you had to be the one. So we want to be careful, right? Because now we're starting to spill over into emotional self-sufficiency versus emotional isolation. We learned early how to be emotionally self-sufficient, but self-sufficiently can quietly turn into isolation. JL acted alone. There was no committee, no group chat, no sounding board, just her in the moment. We often operate the same way. We don't always share our burdens. We process internally and we move forward without asking for help. And while that builds strength, it also builds walls because strength without outlet becomes pressure. Then comes the misinterpretation of that silence. Ah, silence is often misunderstood. When JL didn't announce her intentions, it wasn't because she lacked conviction. It was because she didn't need to explain. Our silence is similar. But see, here's the problem in today's society. Silence gets misread as disinterest, coldness, and detachment, when reality is really just observation, discernment, and emotional regulation. Gen X doesn't react to everything. They choose their moments. We do this. In a culture that values constant expression, the restraint can be that we express can be mistaken for absence. Hyper independence is sometimes used as a survival mechanism. Let's call it what it is. Many of us in Gen X, independence was not a choice, it was just a requirement. Just like JL, we didn't have the luxury of hesitation. Gen X, we didn't always have the luxury of reliance. We learned how to solve problems alone, how to manage emotions privately, how to function without constant support. And over time, that turns into hyper independence, which looks like strength on the outside, but on the inside, it feels like, do I have to do everything by myself? It's tiresome. JL's story is not filled with long prayers or declarations. Her faith shows up through actions, and that's where we often align spiritually. And that's where we actually align spiritually. Sorry about that. We may not always be the most vocal, the most outwardly expressive, but our faith shows up in responsibility, loyalty, doing what's right, even when it's hard. It's a lived faith, a practical faith, a just handle it kind of faith. But here's the tension. When faith is only expressed through action, it can become exhausting because even faith needs rest, not just responsibility. A lot of times we run the risk of being overbooked. Jail played a critical role in victory, but she's not always the first name people remember, right? We often experience the same thing. We are, again, the bridge between generation, the stabilizers in chaos. We're the one that keeps things moving. But recognition, we don't always receive that. We're sandwiched between louder narratives. We're often expected to just manage. And sometimes our strength becomes an expectation. And this is where it gets real. When we're known for being strong, people stop asking if we're okay. JL's strength became her identity in that moment. Sometimes our strength becomes our identity. They've got it. We'll figure it out. We don't need help. And over time, that turns into expectation, not appreciation. Expectation, which can lead to burnout. Because even the strongest people need a space to not be strong. I would like to give an example about a place that I worked at previously. I felt like I was being burned out. I was tired. I was tired of handling this person's problem, that person's problem, and that person's problem. There was no clear distinction between my job duties. There, I was in a space where I was a people pleaser. So I was working so hard to make sure that everybody else's work was done that I was kind of slacking on my own. I received a email from my supervisor who knew that I was in the process of cleaning up several messes to remind me that my backyard was dirty. I instantly dropped all of my side projects that were not in my job description and handled my situation. So when I was able to catch up to my things and get my things done, I then went back to assist the people who I had been assisting. And do you know that they wrote me up? Yeah, I popped my lips on that. They wrote me up because I didn't assist, let's just say, Alexa with completing her project. And she had been waiting for me to respond. So she wasn't able to complete her project. This is That is an example, very briefly, about how we go from expectations. All I can tell you guys is now we kind of need to start working in a way where we can reclaim balance. You know, that's the way forward for us. And I mean, anyone who resonates with this spirit, the answer isn't to abandon strength, it's just to balance it. What that means is letting someone else step in sometimes, expressing needs without feeling weak, creating space for rest and not just responsibility. JL's story, it kind of shows us what decisive action looks like, but it doesn't mean we're meant to live in that intensity all the time. There's a difference between being capable and being constantly required. So I don't want you guys to go out there like, yeah, I'm JL. I'm gonna no. We don't need her every day. We don't need her every day. And I kind of want you guys to take the time out to read. Let's just redefine strength. Maybe strength isn't just handling everything, staying silent, being self-sufficient. Maybe strength can also look like asking for support, setting limits, and letting yourself be seen occasionally. We, as a generation, have already proven resilience. We have nothing left to prove. Now it's about sustainability. There's something deeply spiritual about JL's story that often gets overlooked. She acted in alignment with a greater purpose, but she acted as a human being, and that matters. because it reminds us you can be used for something powerful and still need care, rest, and restoration afterwards. We carry purpose, but purpose should not come at the cost of peace. So, in closing, I just want to say take the time out and rest. There will come times where you will have to pick up the pike, and it's okay when you have to pick up the pike. Sometimes they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Maybe some days you'll need to play dirty. And if you have to be dirty, then that's what it is. You'll play dirty. You'll pick up the pike. Somebody not even gonna know what you mean. In your next email, and somebody's aggravating you, just let them know, hey, yeah, I'm about to go ahead and pick up the pike. I'm just gonna do that. And in a culture that often celebrates visibility, it's easy to overlook the power of those who move quietly. History and scripture tell a different story. People like JL change outcomes without ever seeking recognition. In generations like us, we carry that same energy, steady, observant, and ready when it matters. So whether you see yourself in this or you're learning from it, here's something to hold on to. You don't have to always be the loudest voice in the room to be the one who makes a difference. And once again, as I stated, don't be afraid. Do not be scared. Do not be afraid to pick up the pike. Thank you. Good night.